This is the Lockpicker 1969, and welcome to my channel, and welcome to the next episode of Challenge Lock Workshop. Today we have an interview with Challenge Lock maker LockChuck. Say hi.
Hi, everyone.
So, how long have you been making challenge locks?
Not very long. Probably, I'm guessing about April of this year, which is 2023. So, um, I made, I started just, the first one I made, of course, was for the blue belt
Yep.
requirement.
So, can you talk about that one?
Yeah, that was my first one. I ended up calling it deep because I thought I was doing good and making a deep fault set. 'Cause that was my goal, to make deep fault sets. I was really getting started, trying to figure out how to cut the pins, and I was thinking of the principle of a metal lathe. So I was trying to basically make um, tooling bits out of hardened steel and putting them in a Dremel and kind of using a Dremel as a high-speed lathe and doing it that way. But it was just basically clamping a Dremel down and then trying to hold a milling bit up to it, and it wasn't working out too well. I mean, the pins turned out okay, but it was very hard to hold the tools. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. So, have you ever given a thought to using something like the multi-vise from Dremel that would hold it for you pretty well and free up your hands?
Well, what I kind of switched to, after I got that first lock, it kind of spurred a desire to make more. I was like, man, it was almost, at the time, it was more fun than picking locks. It was just trying to come up with ideas. So I think that's when may have started your first few episodes of the Challenge Lock Maker series,
Yep.
and you kind of highlighted some things that you suggested, and one was the um, Dremel, not that one. It was
The
the Dremel.
workstation.
Yeah, where you
Yep.
can turn it 90 degrees.
Yep.
It was almost like a drill press. So I
Yep.
got that. And you also showed a XY table. I got a small version of what you showed there after that first one. I also, after that first one, I bought a full size metal lathe because I'd always wanted one for other stuff. And I was like,
Okay.
but to find out, it is not ideal for turning little pieces of brass rod. So
Ah, okay.
it doesn't spin fast enough. So
Oh, okay. All right. So at this point, how many challenge locks have you made now?
officially sent out, I've got 5 sent out. I'm working on 6, I think 6, 7, and 8. They're in different stages of being made. And I've got a bunch of housings prepped. I probably got like 8 or 9 more housing or mortise locks prepped and ready. I just got to come up with an idea for them.
Okay.
But five are out in the wild right now.
So out of the
Not too many.
five, which one do you feel is the most difficult? Was the most difficult to make?
Um, I'll probably say that Bouncing Betty was the hardest because it is kind of a pin and pin on the driver's side. So it's like a T-pin with a hollowed pin around it. So that one took a lot of time, not only making hollow pins that were spools and serrated and everything else, but then going back and making the T-pins because I wanted the tip of the T-pin that stuck past it to match the whatever the hollow part of the pin. So if it was a
Mm-hmm.
spool, I wanted the tip of the T-pin or the pin and pin to stick below it, and it was also a mini version of that same. So
Okay.
yeah,
I
I was.
I think I made a few of those myself. Yeah, I like that too.
So that one's that one was probably the hardest. I mean, but that was my last one I did as well. Um, I will say that the sixth one I'm working on, it's been fairly intensive, but it's not hen making wise. I'm making a custom housing, so
Okay.
it's been a little bit challenging. It's I don't know if you're familiar with like a Corbin master ring cylinder.
I can't say I am.
So it's basically it's a large mortise cylinder. I mean it's probably a half inch, three-quarters inch bigger diameter than a regular mortise.
Okay.
But its center core is the same, but outside of it is probably about a 3/16 thick ring. So instead of having master wafers for your master keying, there's actually a master ring that has a whole nother shear line.
Oh wow.
So what I did with it is I milled down the master wafer or master core, the master ring, excuse me, and I'm fixing it into the mortise, and then I'm putting another shear line ring over the top of it.
Okay.
So it's kind of I don't know if you ever seen Lock Noob had a video on the unpickable lock, which was full of wafers.
No.
It's kind of based off of it. It's basically
Okay.
as soon as you touch a pin, it puts you in a false set, but you can't set anything else.
Okay. I'll have to check that out. I can't recall seeing that one. So, out of the locks you've sent out there, though, which one do you feel is the most difficult for the community to open?
Oh, well, probably teabagging.
Okay.
Um,
Is there a reason for that?
it it gives a the sixth pin is very long. The driver pin is very long, so it is very hard to lift. But the problem is, it's one of the it has to be the first one of the first pins set. But as soon as you do any counter rotation, anything else, it keeps dropping. They're
Mm.
dumbbell shaped drivers, so that one. Um, I believe Lady Locks may have called it a few ugly names.
Well,
But Pick Smith, of course, Pick Smith picked right through it, which I haven't, that didn't surprise me.
okay. So, have you made any of your challenge locks specifically for specific pickers?
No, not yet.
Do
I
you
do
plan
want to
to?
make, yes, I do. I want to make up to Lady Locks for teabagging. So I haven't told her yet. She'll probably find out when she listens to this. I want to make one that is a very not easy, but a very enjoyable one that gives a lot of feedback and is not as big of a pain as that teabagging. So
Okay.
I kind of wanted to. She'll hear about it, I guess, if she listens to this. But I want to send one, and I haven't quite got the name. Something easy, easy does it, or something, and maybe the name.
Okay. So, all right. So, when you sit down to start a new challenge lock, what are your inspirations that you think about and goes into what you decide to do with that challenge lock?
So, like when I first started, it was just to make the pins. The first probably two I did were just making the pins. After that, they were all themed. So something will hit me, um, like the Bouncing Betty. I was watching a military history show, and they had something. They were talking about the Bouncing Betties, which are really landmines.
Yep.
Um, and I was like, that would be interesting to see if I can make a bouncing pin. So that's how it kind of now I kind of start with a theme and try to
Work around
um
that.
yes, that's
Work
if
into that. Yep.
right. And the same was like with teabagging and ho ho ho. So try to keep it friendly for teabagging, but if you know what that is, the pins are
Yep.
shaped in a part of anatomy. Um
Yep.
ho 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 is all Christmas trees. Um
Ah, okay.
Some are false Christmas trees, so they're overset traps, but you don't know There'll all be a Christmas tree, but you don't know which part is on the driver and which part is on the key pin.
Mm, okay.
Which I think Paracentric said he got that one. So I think he
Okay.
said in picking time last week he did get that one open.
So I don't know about you, but I do pin therapy where I'll
Yes.
just sit there and throw some brass rod in and make whatever comes to mind and just try different things and have fun with it. And it's very therapeutic in a way, and I forget about everything else for a while, and the time goes by really quick. And by the time you're done, you've got like 15, 20 pins sitting there, and you've gone through a bunch of brass rods. So what is your
Yes.
favorite pin to create? Maybe not for what you're doing with the challenge lock, but just when you're making pins and you just make one for the heck of it, what's your favorite one to create?
It's probably the Christmas trees because it combines the two different diameter spools, if you will. So it's fun to try to get, the taper down in size. So those I've got those little 3D printed pen holders full of, from when I just sit there and go through making them. It's like it's whatever comes out, and it's like, okay, that looks good, and I'll cut it off and throw it in
Yep.
that little tray and
Yep.
try something else, or just to see what I can do with learning tools and the Dremel together, seeing what works, what doesn't, and of
Yeah.
course
I,
get.
I find it's usually the driver pins that I'm making when I'm doing that, and I have a whole
Mm-hmm.
contain. So I'll separate out one container with things that are more spools. I'll separate another one out for serrations. And if I do something like a spool with serrations, I'll still throw it in the spool. But then you can just kind of pick and choose what you want. And the actual customizing, as far as for a challenge lock goes, is when I'm working on the actual key pins. So, and I'll make
Oh,
those
gotcha.
so they interact with what I'm going to throw in there. So,
Yeah, and that's probably one of my downfalls is I test each pin individually, but sometimes when I get them all together, they they counter each other. Sometimes it seems like
yeah.
effectiveness, but
So, what's your favorite mod to do on like the core or the cylinder?
um, I like doing counter milling or over milling. Um, I'm still trying to work out ways to do it better. With one of them, because the problem with a lot of Dremel bits is the shaft is so big, it, it you can't get a head bigger than the shaft, or so you can go down from the top of the Bible and get in there to do some from the top.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I've been I like doing that, but it's right. The only time I've got a decent one was when I took a nail and basically took the head of it and filed it and made a custom bit. So that way the head was much larger than the shaft.
Hmm.
So that way I had some wiggle room when I was coming from the top, so I wasn't hitting the other sides of the cylinder wall.
So you're saying the burr bits have too big of a shaft?
Yeah, I mean, because the head's almost the same diameter as the shaft. So if you get it in there, you can't move side to side because the shaft's hitting the side of the Bible or the
Ha-
driver wall.
Have you ever tried using like a flexi shaft connected to your Dremel to work with as a hand tool?
I bought one, but I haven't really used it that much. It's because I kind of like the pen. Well, I guess when I'm doing the Bible work, I could see probably using that. But when I'm doing some of it, I like having it. I like the milling version, if you will. So I like to be able to drop the Dremel down in there, have it stationary, and just use the XY table. Because I seem when I try to do things by hand, it gets ugly.
So something to think about, but like with a burr bit, and if you're doing a Bible mod and you're wanting to put that undercutting, right where it meets the core. Um, if you stick the burr bit down in there just to the right depth you want, and then mark your bit with some like marker that is a color of some kind, then you'll have
Mm-hmm.
kind of a depth judgment when you're working down in there of how far you can go before it needs to stop, so you can work just on that spot. Just
Right.
something, I guess, to think about. I do it for other things with drill bits and other like woodworking and stuff too, to get just the depth I want for drilling a hole, but same concept.
Yeah.
um so what would you say is your approach? So you've had your inspiration, you've come up with a theme, you have an idea of what you want to create. How do you approach actually making it then? So like, what do you work on first?
I usually start with the driver pins, get those shaped and make sure they go through because sometimes when you're milling them or machining them, the brass will flare. So I work on getting all that smoothed out and getting it sliding through a standard Bible first. Um, and then once I do that, because I don't have a set length, so I just kind of make them variations of sizes first, and then after that's done, then I go to pick the key or the key pin driver size because when I first started, I was wanting to do these extreme lows and highs, but what I've learned in listening to other people's talk about it is really you want a lot of lows. You can have a few high, but to get the most effectiveness out of your pins, you really need
Mm-hmm.
a short key pin.
Yep.
So that way you're getting more bang out of that pin so you
Yeah.
can have more interaction.
It
So
interacts
you
more
can do
with your core.
more
Yeah.
you can do more mods with shorter
Yep.
pins versus doing the high lows and high lows. So
However, if you put a long key pin in with a lot of mods on it and have it interact with the Bible, it can get just as hung up if they overset that. And if it's
true.
easy to
Yeah.
overset, then you can really mess with them. But anyway, okay. So what, other than like the standard, Dremel and files, and what would you say are your go-to tools for making CLs?
And this may be a standard one too, but mine is a jeweler's saw.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yep.
but that's I've tried a couple of different things, just regular saw blades and stuff, and nothing. Just I don't know if it's in proper use or what, but between the files and the jeweler saw, that gets me most of the shapes I want. Once I figured out how to stop breaking the jeweler saw blades, I was doing better.
If you want, and I know I did a video on it, and Jay Gabriel sent me that tool, but it's a hobby saw.
Yeah, I see. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And you can put two blades on it at once and make two very fine serrations, like right next to one another. Lift the blades, set it down so that one of the blades goes in between the lines that you already made, and you'll have four really fine serrations all next to one another.
yeah. I've looked at. I think I've heard you say it, and I've kind of looked at them. I just haven't pulled the trigger. I guess.
Yep. Best tool I ever got from anybody or had for making serrations with. It's, if I want to make wider serrations, yeah, then I use a hacksaw blade, or you can also use, I've used like a utility knife or an X-Acto knife. What do they call them?
Yeah.
Hobby knives for.
Mhm.
Anyways, those will do okay, but nothing is ever done as well as that hobby saw has done. So, okay, so now, other than the jeweler saw, what is one tool you would say every challenge lock maker should have in their arsenal?
So Dremel. I mean, the workstation or some way to mount the Dremel.
Yeah.
If you're going to be doing pins, I know you may have said that's central, but I think some way to stationary. That way you're moving around the pins and not having to chase the Dremel or hold the Dremel. You've got both hands to use the tool. But really, I mean, I try to keep it simple right now. I'm using just the files, jeweler saws,
Yep.
and the Dremel and the workstation. That's a lot. And I've come out. I mean, and I think I even got Picksmith on it. He thought I had some of those dumbbells so smooth. He thought they were out of something. He didn't think they were custom made.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've got pretty good results out of that.
So,
And just learning how to vary your speed too when you're doing
yeah.
certain things, when to slow the Dremel down
Yep.
and when to speed it back up.
Yep.
Of course, sandpaper. I mean, I go down to probably 1200 grit sandpaper sometimes.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's a bit farther than I wind up going, but I understand why. That's how you're getting that polish.
Hmm.
So, all right. So, I guess the one thing that I would think of if you've got a Dremel and the jeweler saw and the files and, a lot of those typical things, how do you handle. So, when you're cutting that pin off and that Dremel is spinning, how many times have you had your pins go flying everywhere and you couldn't find it afterwards?
Too many, and they were good pins. And I'll be working around the shop and then look on the floor and there's the pin. But that's days later after I was needing it. So yeah, I've tried putting that shoebox under it, but sometimes they just go flying. And
Really? So you've tried the shoebox method? That's what I was just about to suggest.
yeah, well, it's not a shoebox, but it's the same shape as a shoebox. It was little containers that I have in my shop, and
Because
yeah, and
I use
sure
it.
enough, it'll either clear it or it'll hit it and bounce out.
I use it to both catch the pin when I cut it off, plus the shoebox catches all the shavings as well. So it makes it for a lot easier cleanup afterwards. Well, I wouldn't say it catches all the shavings, but
No,
enough,
because
yeah, enough of them that it's a majority of the mess, and then you just take a little hand vac and pick up the rest of the dust when you're done. So, all right. All right, last question. So, are there any other challenge lock makers that you take inspiration from or admire?
oh yes, I haven't. I love Picksmith stuff. I haven't got a. I haven't had many come across, but I do see I watch other people so I can see the pins. So like Harry Bow just comes up with some crazy stuff. Jay Gabriel, spectacular stuff, and um, so those are probably the main ones that I've looked for. Their CLs or to
Yep.
see how they did stuff.
Yep. So, when are you going to dive into playing with magnets?
I have I have debated about it. I need to do some research on what can and can't be milled on them and how to, how, or do I just have to buy the magnet at that size that'll fit the cylinder? Or
Yeah,
depends on
because
what I want to do with it.
I'll tell you, working with stainless steel rod stock is no small feat. It takes a lot more effort to work it out as a pin.
Yeah, I imagine you probably need some diamond files or something to be
Yep.
working with
Well,
those.
you have to use a diamond hacksaw blade just to cut a section off that'll go into your Dremel bit, so you can spin it, and then you need tools that are like diamond coated. That helps. It definitely, but you tend to make wider like serrations than you really want to. So I kind of look at it as a way to get it started, and then you can get something in there that's thinner, and it just takes a while. But you got to be careful. You don't want to dull your blades and stuff either. So, but yeah,
Yeah,
lots of
yeah,
fun
it's kind of
stuff.
yeah.
So
Working with a lot of stainless is tough.
Is there anything you'd like to say to inspire other challenge lock makers out there?
Give it a try. I know I hear a lot of people on their interviews talk about how they dreaded doing the challenge lock. I probably was the same. It was like, do I really want to do that? But once I got the bug for it, I was like, this is fun. And I think I actually mentioned to somebody. I said, I have more fun doing that sometimes than I do sitting down picking. But
Yep.
that was some time ago now. I've gone
Right,
down other rabbit holes.
right
But
there with you. I like
but
making them more than I
it's
like picking them.
yes. I'm not a real good challenge lock picker, but I enjoy just trying stuff and seeing how people like it and getting their feedback.
Yep, I agree. Well, I want to thank you. This has been great. I've enjoyed being able to just peer into your mind about your thoughts on making them because I know I enjoy it, and that's the reason I wanted to do this series. So I definitely appreciate you doing the interview.
Yeah, I appreciate what you do for the community as well.
Oh,
I
thank you.
enjoy watching all your videos.
Thank you. All right. Well, with that, we'll wrap this one up. If you are a subscriber, thank you. If you are not yet a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications and all, and hit like on the video. And thanks for listening.